There's a trainer standing alone at the peak of Mount Silver, waiting in the freezing cold, at the highest point in all of Kanto and Johto, and he hasn't spoken a single word in 3 years. His name is Red, and he's not there by accident. You know him. Everyone knows him. The kid from Pallet Town who became champion at 11 years old, who single-handedly dismantled Team Rocket, who filled an entire Pokédex and conquered the Indigo Plateau. But somewhere between becoming a legend and disappearing into the mountains, something broke inside him. And when you finally climb through the snow and the ice to face him, when you stand before the greatest trainer the world has ever known, he doesn't say hello. He doesn't acknowledge your achievement. He doesn't say anything at all. Just 3 dots. That's it. That's all you get. 3 punctuation marks where there should be words, where there should be pride or recognition or even simple human interaction. And then he sends out his level 88 Pikachu. And you realize, this isn't cool. This isn't mysterious. This is pathological. This is what trauma looks like when it wears a red cap and carries 6 Pokeballs. Let me ask you something. What kind of person becomes the most powerful trainer in the world at 11 years old? Saves an entire region from organized crime, achieves everything they ever wanted, and then runs away to live alone on a frozen mountain, cutting off all contact with friends, family, even their own mother. What kind of champion refuses to defend their title, abandons their position, and hides in the most inaccessible place they can find? Training obsessively, endlessly, as if the moment they stop, something terrible will catch up to them. This isn't the story of a hero. This is the story of a child soldier, weaponized by circumstance, traumatized by violence, and unable to exist in the world that once celebrated him. Mount Silver isn't Red's victory lap. It's his safe place. It's the only location where the pressure stops, where nobody can ask him to be the hero again, where he doesn't have to face the society that turned him into an anti-Team Rocket weapon before he was old enough to understand what that meant. And the silence isn't mysterious. It's not stoic. It's not some cool character trait. The silence is a symptom. It's source. And if you look closely at Red's journey, if you examine what happened between Pallet Town and Mount Silver, you'll see exactly when and how it all fell apart. Let's start with the obvious. Red was 11 years old when his adventure began. 11. That's a 6th grader. That's a kid who should be worried about homework and playing with friends, not dismantling criminal organizations and battling underground fight clubs. But in the Pokémon world, 11 is when you get your starter. 11 is when you leave home. 11 is when you're expected to navigate hostile territory, fight grown adults for money, and handle problems that would challenge someone 3 times your age. And Red was exceptional. He wasn't just good at Pokémon battles. He was prodigious. He caught everything, beat everyone, solved every crisis. And by the time he reached the Pokémon League, he'd faced down the most powerful criminal organization in Kanto multiple times, alone. Think about that for a second. An 11-year-old child repeatedly putting himself in danger, confronting armed criminals. Because the adults in his world, Professor Oak, the gym leaders, the police, everyone just let him do it. They let him walk into the game corner hideout, let him face Giovanni, let him storm Sylph Co. while Team Rocket held the entire building hostage. And why? Because he was good at Pokémon battles, because he happened to be in the right place at the right time, because no one else wanted to risk themselves when they had a talented kid who could do it for them. Red became a hero, sure, but he never asked to be one. He was a child, doing what children do, exploring, collecting, battling. And the world around him kept escalating the stakes until he found himself responsible for things that should have been handled by trained professionals. And here's the thing about trauma. Here's what we know about how it affects young people. Swaren, when children are forced into high-stress situations repeatedly, Saregi, when they're given responsibilities that exceed their developmental capacity, when they experience life or death scenarios before their brains are fully equipped to process them, it changes them. It changes how they see the world. It changes how they see themselves. It changes their ability to feel safe, to trust others, to exist in normal social situations without feeling that constant underlying threat. This is what we call complex PTSD, and it happens when trauma isn't a single event, but a series of events, a sustained period of stress and danger that rewires the developing brain. And everything we see about Red's behavior in Gold and Silver, everything about his isolation on Mount Silver, his refusal to speak, his obsessive training, his complete withdrawal from society, it all fits. But here's where it gets really dark. Here's where the popular fan theories intersect with legitimate psychological trauma. Because Red's breaking point might not have been facing Team Rocket. It might not have been the pressure of becoming champion. It might have been something much smaller, much more personal, and much more devastating. It might have been eradicate. You know the theory. Everyone who's been in the Pokemon community for more than 5 minutes knows the theory. But let's talk about why it matters. Why this seemingly small moment might be the key to understanding everything that came after. When you battle your rival Blue on the SS Anne, he has a Raticate. It's part of his team. You fight it, you beat it, you move on. The ship leaves port, and life continues, except the next time you encounter Blue in Pokemon Tower, a literal graveyard for dead Pokemon, that Raticate is gone, permanently gone, simply missing. He only has 5 Pokemon now. Pidgeotto, Gyarados, Exeggcute, Kadabra, and his starter, 5, not 6. And he's standing in a cemetery, and he says something strange. What brings you here? Your Pokemon don't look dead. Why would he say that? Why would he specifically reference dead Pokemon in a cemetery unless he was there to mourn? The theory goes like this. During your battle on the SS Anne, Red's Pokemon severely injured Blue's Raticate. The ship was in chaos. The SS Anne was leaving port, and Blue couldn't get to a Pokemon Center in time. And by the time he could heal his team, it was too late. Raticate died from injuries sustained in a battle with Red. Now, you might say, It's just a game mechanic. Blue swapped out Raticate for a stronger Pokémon. That's all. And maybe you're right. But think about the implications if the theory is true. Think about what that would mean for both of these 11-year-old kids. For Blue, it would be the first time he truly lost something. The first time his rivalry with Red had real consequences. The first time he understood that these battles they treated like games, these fights for pride and bragging rights, could result in actual death. And for Red, it would be the moment he realized he'd killed something. Not defeated, not knocked out, killed. Actually killed. A living creature that had trusted its trainer, that had fought because Blue asked it to, died because Red was too strong, too good, too determined to win. 11 years old, and he'd killed something. Even if it was an accident, even if he didn't mean to, even if it was just the consequence of doing what everyone told him was right. Battling, winning, being the best. That's the kind of thing that stays with you. That's the kind of thing that changes how you see yourself. And if it's true, if Raticate really did die from that battle, then every encounter with Blue after that, every subsequent fight, every time Red won, he'd be wondering, am I going to kill another one? Am I a murderer? And the world around him, Professor Oak, the gym leaders, everyone else, they wouldn't understand. They'd see Red's hesitation as weakness. They'd push him to keep battling, keep winning, because that's what champions do. They don't dwell on casualties. They don't let one dead Pokémon stop them from greatness. Except Red is 11, and 11-year-olds aren't supposed to rationalize death. They're not supposed to compartmentalize loss and move forward. They're supposed to be protected from that kind of trauma. They're supposed to have adults who help them process what happened, who tell them it wasn't their fault, who give them space to feel what they're feeling. But Red doesn't get that. Red gets keep going, keep battling, become the champion. So he does. He pushes it down. He keeps fighting. He keeps winning. And all the while, something inside him is breaking. Slowly. Inevitably. Like a stress fracture that gets worse with every battle, every victory. Every moment he has to pretend he's fine when he's not. And Blue processes it differently. Blue externalizes. He gets angry. He gets competitive. He channels that grief and guilt into becoming stronger, into proving that Raticate's death wasn't for nothing, that he can honor his lost Pokémon by becoming champion. Which he does. Blue reaches the Pokémon League first. Blue defeats the Elite Four. Blue becomes champion before Red even gets there. And for a brief moment, maybe Blue thinks he's found peace. Maybe he thinks becoming champion will make the loss hurt less. But then Red shows up. Red, who might have killed Raticate. Red, who never seems to struggle the way Blue struggles. Red, who makes everything look easy, walks into the champion's chamber and takes it all away. Blue becomes champion and holds the title for less than a day, maybe less than an hour, before Red defeats him and takes it. Imagine that. Imagine working towards something your entire life, achieving it, standing at the absolute pinnacle of success, and having it ripped away immediately by the same person who might have caused the most painful loss you ever experienced. But here's the thing. Here's what makes this story so fascinating and so tragic. Blue survives it. Blue takes the loss. Listens to Professor Oak tell him he doesn't treat his Pokémon with enough love. Accepts defeat. And then Blue grows. 3 years later, when we see Blue again in gold and silver, he's not bitter, he's not broken. He's the gym leader of Viridian City. He's matured. He's learned from his losses. He's built a life for himself that doesn't revolve around being the absolute best. Blue learned to let go. Learned that failure isn't the end. Learned that losing doesn't define him. And most importantly, Blue remained connected to the world. He maintained relationships. He found purpose beyond battling. He continued to exist as a functional member of society. Blue became an adult, not perfectly, but healthily, the way someone his age should. And Red disappeared. Red, who won. Red, who achieved everything. Red, who became the champion, the hero, the legend. Red couldn't handle it. Because winning didn't fix what was broken inside him. Becoming champion didn't make the guilt go away. Defeating Blue didn't prove he was good enough. It just added more weight, more pressure, more reasons to believe he was dangerous. If the Radicate theory is true, then Red didn't just become champion. He became champion by defeating the person whose Pokémon he might have killed. He crushed Blue's dreams the same day Blue achieved them. He took everything his former friend worked for, and he couldn't even enjoy it, because all he could think about was whether he'd broken Blue the same way he'd broken himself. This is where we need to talk about the difference between Red and Blue's psychological responses, because they both experienced similar traumas. They both lost innocence. They both paid prices for their ambitions, but they processed it completely differently. Blue had what psychologists call a secure attachment style. He had his grandfather, Professor Oak, someone who cared about him, someone who gave him feedback, even harsh feedback, someone who told him the truth about his shortcomings, someone who remained constant in his life. When Oak tells Blue he doesn't treat his Pokémon with love, it hurts, but it also gives Blue something to work toward. It gives him a framework for understanding his failure. It tells him, you can be better. Here's how. Red doesn't have that. Red's father is never mentioned. His mother is supportive, but distant. Professor Oak focuses on the Pokédex, on data collection, on Red's usefulness as a researcher. But who's checking on Red the person? Who's asking him how he feels? Who's helping him process the violence he's experiencing? No one. So Red does what traumatized children without support systems do. He internalizes, he isolates, he starts believing the problem is him, that he's the danger, that the world would be better if he removed himself from it. And the thing is, Red's really good at being alone. He's always been self-sufficient. He survived routes full of hostile Pokémon. He solved problems by himself. He learned that he couldn't count on others, that asking for help made him weak, that the only person he could trust was himself. This is textbook avoidant attachment. This is what happens when a child learns early that emotional vulnerability is dangerous, that showing weakness gets you hurt, that the safest option is complete self-reliance. So after becoming champion, after all the fame and pressure and expectation, Red makes a choice. He leaves. He doesn't tell anyone. He doesn't explain. He just goes. Away from Pallet Town. Away from his mother. Away from Professor Oak. Away from Blue. Away from every person who knew him as the hero, the champion, the kid who saved Kanto. And where does he go? Mount Silver. The most remote, most dangerous, most inaccessible location in the known world. A place where only the strongest trainers can survive. A place where you need 16 gym badges just to be allowed entry. A place where the wild Pokémon are so powerful that most trainers turn back before reaching the summit. Red climbs to the very top, sits down, and waits. For what? That's the question. What is Red waiting for? Some fans say he's waiting for a challenger, someone strong enough to beat him, someone who can prove they're worthy. But that doesn't make sense. Because if Red wanted challengers, he'd stay champion. He'd defend his title. He'd engage with the league system. No. Red isn't waiting for challengers. Red is waiting for it to stop. Waiting for the noise in his head to stop. For the memories to stop. For the guilt to stop. For the pressure to stop. For the entire world to stop expecting things from him. Mount Silver's the only place where nobody can reach him. Where nobody can ask him to save them. Where nobody can look at him with expectation in their eyes. Where he doesn't have to be the hero anymore. This is agoraphobia, not in the traditional sense of fear of public spaces, but in the deeper psychological sense. The fear of situations where escape might be difficult, where you might be trapped, where you might be forced to perform or meet expectations you don't feel capable of meeting. For Red, civilization itself has become the trap. Every town is full of people who know him, who want things from him, who see him as a symbol rather than a person. And he can't handle it. He can't exist under that microscope, so he removes himself entirely. The mountain is safe. The mountain is isolated. The mountain demands nothing but survival. And survival, Red knows how to do. Survival is simple compared to being human, compared to having conversations, compared to pretending everything's okay. And the training, the obsessive, endless training with Pokémon that are already at impossibly high levels, that's not about getting stronger. That's about having something to do, a routine that fills the hours, a purpose that doesn't require him to interact with anyone. Red's Pokémon are in their 80s. His Pikachu is level 88 in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. There's no competitive reason for this. There's no challenge he's preparing for. He's champion. He's already beaten everyone. So why keep training? Because if he stops, he'll have to think. And thinking leads to remembering. And remembering leads to feeling. And feeling is what he's been running from since he was 11 years old. This is a coping mechanism, an unhealthy one, but a coping mechanism nonetheless. Red has channeled all his anxiety, all his trauma, all his inability to process what happened to him into the one thing he knows he's good at, the one thing that gives him a sense of control. Training Pokémon, fighting battles, winning. But it's hollow. We can see it's hollow because he won't speak. Because he's cut off contact with his mother. Because when you finally reach him, when you finally prove you're strong enough to stand before him, he doesn't look happy. He doesn't look accomplished. The game doesn't describe him as proud or excited. He's just there. A ghost of the kid he used to be. Going through the motions. Fighting because it's what he does. Existing because the alternative is confronting everything he's been avoiding. The silence is the most telling symptom. Because Red used to talk. We know he did. The copycat in Saffron City mimics his speech patterns. NPCs reference conversations they had with him. He was a normal kid who communicated like normal kids do. But somewhere between Pallet Town and Mount Silver, between 11 and 14 years old, Red stopped talking. Selective mutism in adolescence often develops as a response to trauma, as a way of exercising control when everything else feels out of control, as a form of protection against saying the wrong thing, against being vulnerable, against letting people in. If Red speaks, people will ask questions. They'll want to know why he left, why he abandoned his title, why he's hiding, and Red doesn't have answers. Or rather, he has answers he can't articulate, feelings he can't put into words, trauma he doesn't know how to explain. So he says nothing. 3 dots. And then he battles. Because battling is the one language he still speaks fluently. The one form of communication that doesn't require vulnerability, that doesn't risk exposure. His Pokémon speak for him. His Pikachu, his Charizard, his Venusaur, his Blastoise, his Snorlax, his Espeon or Lapras, depending on the game. These aren't just team members. There's his entire social world. The only relationships he maintains. The only beings he trusts. And even that's telling. Because Pokémon don't judge. Pokémon don't ask difficult questions. Pokémon don't have expectations beyond basic care and battle commands. Pokémon are safe in a way humans never were. Nah. This is why Red's team composition matters. Why it's so deliberately chosen. These aren't just strong Pokémon. They're Pokémon with specific meanings. Madei, Pikachu, his starter, his first partner, the one constant from the beginning. Gramete now at level 88, representing the one pure thing from his childhood that hasn't been corrupted by everything that came after. The 3 Kanto starters fully evolved. Venusaur, Charizard, Blastoise, representing completion. The Pokédex mission Professor Oak gave him. The goal that started this whole journey. Proof that he accomplished what was asked of him even though it cost him everything. Snorlax, the Pokémon you catch sleeping in your path. blocking progress, refusing to move until disturbed. A perfect metaphor for Red himself. An immovable object that won't budge until forced, powerful but dormant, existing in a state of near hibernation. An Espeon or Lapras, depending on which version you're playing. Espeon, the psychic type evolution of Eve that only evolves through high friendship, proof that Red can still form bonds, that he's not completely closed off, that there's still something inside him capable of connection. Or Lapras, the gentle giant, the one you rescue from Sylph Co, the one associated with ferrying people across water, transporting them safely, protecting them. Perhaps the last remnant of Red's protective instinct, the hero he used to be. Each Pokémon tells a story. Each one represents a piece of who Red was, who he tried to be, and who he's become. And when you beat him, when you finally defeat the legendary Red at the peak of Mount Silver, he doesn't rage, he doesn't make excuses, he just disappears. Literally, he vanishes from the mountain. No goodbye, no congratulations, no acknowledgement that you accomplished something incredible. He's just gone, and he'll reappear next time you beat the Elite Four, waiting at the same spot, ready to battle again, but never moving forward, never progressing, never leaving. Trapped in an endless loop, like a ghost, like someone who died but forgot to stop existing, going through the same motions over and over because it's all he knows how to do. This is what complex PTSD looks like in its chronic phase. This is what happens when trauma goes untreated, when support systems fail, when a child is forced to become an adult before they're ready and then punished for not being able to handle it. Red's not mysterious. Red's not cool. Red's not playing hard to get or testing you or waiting for the perfect challenger. Red's broken. In the world he saved, Iwi, the region he rescued from Team Rocket, and the people he protected, and then they never noticed. They never asked. They never looked close enough to see that the boy who became champion at 11 never really came back from that journey. At the end, they got a legend, an urban myth, a secret final boss, Deerwall, but they lost a person. Irawal, they lost Red the kid from Pallet Town. Red who loved Pokémon. Red who went on adventures with his rival. Red who had dreams bigger than just surviving. That Red died somewhere between the SS Anne and Pokémon Tower. Somewhere between saving Sylph Co and defeating Blue. Somewhere between becoming champion and realizing it didn't fix anything. And now, all that's left is the ghost on the mountain, silent, powerful, unreachable, waiting for nothing, training for no reason, existing in a state of permanent disconnection from the world below. But we need to go deeper, because Mount Silver didn't happen overnight. Red didn't just wake up one day and decide to become a hermit. There's a progression here, a series of escalating traumas that built on each other, each one pushing him further from the world, further into himself, until isolation became the only option that made sense. Let's talk about Team Rocket. Really talk about them. Not as cartoon villains or convenient obstacles, but as what they actually were, an organized crime syndicate with weapons. with hostages, with a documented willingness to torture and kill Pokémon for profit. And Red, 11-year-old Red, kept walking directly into their operations, alone. The Game Corner hideout in Celadon City. Red discovers Team Rocket is running an illegal gambling operation as a front. So what does he do? Does he call the police? Does he tell Officer Jenny? Does he find an adult who can handle this? By name Cam. No. He walks down into the hideout, fights his way through dozens of Team Rocket grunts, navigates their base, and confronts Giovanni, the boss of the entire organization, by himself, 11 years old. Think about what that means. Think about the actual scenario. Red is in an underground criminal headquarters, surrounded by adults who are breaking the law, who have already demonstrated they're willing to harm Pokémon, who have no reason to show mercy to a kid who's interfering with their operation. And Red fights them, battles them, defeats them, takes the Sylph Scope and leaves, and everyone treats this as normal, as expected, as just another Tuesday in the life of a Pokémon trainer. But it's not normal. It's traumatic. It's a child being forced into violent confrontations with adult criminals. And the fact that it's done through Pokémon battles doesn't make it less traumatic. If anything, it makes it worse. Because it normalizes the violence. It makes Red think this is okay. This is what he's supposed to do. This is his role. And then Sylph Co happens. This is where it escalates. This is where Red stops being a kid who stumbled into a few bad situations and becomes a weapon. Becomes the person everyone turns to when they need someone to fight Team Rocket. Team Rocket takes over Sylph Co., the largest corporation in Kanto. They're holding the building hostage. They're threatening employees. They want the Master Ball, the ultimate Pokémon catching technology. And what do the authorities do? Nothing. They wait. They establish a perimeter. They hope Team Rocket will just leave eventually. And meanwhile, Red shows up. 11-year-old Red walks into a hostage situation, fights his way up multiple floors, defeats Giovanni again, saves the company president, stops Team Rocket's plan, and becomes a hero. But here's what nobody talks about. Here's what nobody asks. How did Red feel during that? What was going through his head as he walked through those corridors, knowing Team Rocket was waiting, knowing they were more organized this time, more desperate, more dangerous? Did he want to be there? Did he want to be the one responsible for saving all those people? Or did he do it because everyone expected him to? Because he was the kid who beat Team Rocket before? Because refusing would mean admitting he was scared? Admitting he was just a child who shouldn't be in that building at all? This is what we mean when we say Red was weaponized. He became a tool, a solution to a problem that adults should have solved. And every time he succeeded, every time he won, it reinforced the idea that this was his job. This was his purpose. This was what he was for. And the really insidious part, he was good at it. Really good. So good that it seemed effortless. So good that nobody questioned whether he should be doing it. They just kept asking him to do more. Beat Team Rocket at the game corner. Cham. Check. Save Sylph Co. Check Trio confront Giovanni at Viridian Gym. Sure, Renowadin. Why not? You've done it twice already. Viridian, what's one more time? And Red does it. Because that's what Red does. He solves problems. He wins battles. He doesn't complain. He doesn't ask for help. He just handles it. But every time he handles it, every time he walks into danger and comes out victorious, he's reinforcing his own isolation. He's learning that he can't rely on others, that adults won't protect him, that if something needs to be done, he has to do it himself. This is how self-reliance becomes pathological. This is how strength becomes a prison. Because Red can't show weakness, can't admit fear, can't ask for help, because everyone's counting on him. Because he's the kid who beat Team Rocket. Because showing vulnerability would mean letting everyone down. And then, between all of this, between the Game Corner and Sylph Co., between saving the region and becoming a hero, there's Pokemon Tower. Let's talk about Pokemon Tower. Because this is where Red has to confront something he's been avoiding. Something that all the battling and winning and defeating Team Rocket couldn't protect him from. Death. Not theoretical death. Not the sanitized version where Pokemon faint and get back up at the Pokemon Center. But real, permanent, irreversible death. Pokemon Tower is a cemetery. A monument to loss. Floor after floor of graves. Mourners. Ghosts. The physical manifestation of what happens when Pokemon don't get back up. When they don't come back. And Red has to go there. Has to climb those floors. Has to walk past all those graves. All those reminders that the battles he's been fighting, the victories he's been celebrating, they have weight. They have consequences. They can end in ways he can't undo. Cubone's mother is there. Or rather, her ghost is there. Killed by Team Rocket. Her skull worn by her child is the only thing he has left of her. And Red has to witness that. Has to see the direct result of Team Rocket's cruelty. The kind of permanent loss that no amount of winning can fix. And then, in the middle of all that death, all that grief, Red encounters Blue. Blue, who only has 5 Pokemon. Blue, who's standing in a cemetery. Blue, who says your Pokemon don't look dead, like it's an accusation, like it's a challenge. Like he's angry that Red's team is intact when his isn't. If the Raticate theory is true, this is the moment Red understands what he did. This is where the abstract concept of defeating an opponent becomes concrete, becomes real, becomes a Pokemon that isn't coming back. Marcum, and Blue doesn't explain, doesn't tell Red what happened, just battles him again, like fighting will somehow make sense of the senseless. Like winning or losing matters when there's already been a loss that can't be measured in badges or experience points. Red wins. Of course he wins. He always wins. But what does winning mean here? What does it prove? That he's stronger? That he was right to fight Raticate as hard as he did? That he shouldn't feel guilty because technically he was just doing what trainers do? None of that helps. None of that makes it better, because Red is 11, and he's standing in a cemetery, and his best friend, his rival, The person he's known his entire life is looking at him with something that might be grief, might be anger, might be the realization that their childhood games have turned into something neither of them signed up for. And after that battle, after that encounter in Pokémon Tower, Red has to keep going, has to keep climbing, has to face the actual ghost that's blocking his path. The spirit of Marowak, protecting her child even in death. And Red has to fight her too. He has to fight a dead Pokémon, a ghost, a mother. He has to defeat her, has to win, has to take the Sylph Scope and use it to see her clearly just so he can make her disappear, so he can progress, so he can continue his journey. There's no comfort in that. There's no victory. There's just a child being forced to confront mortality, to interact with death, to treat it as just another obstacle to overcome, just another battle to win. And nobody helps him process this. Nobody sits Red down and says, "Hey, that was traumatic, that was heavy. It's okay to be affected by what you saw." They just send him to the next town, the next gym, the next challenge. Because Red is fine. Red is always fine. Red doesn't break down or have panic, attacks or show visible signs of trauma. So everyone assumes he's handling it, assumes he's resilient, assumes his silence is strength rather than the beginning of shutdown. But inside, something is changing. Something is breaking down. Because you can't ask an 11-year-old to confront death, to question whether he's killed something, to fight ghosts in a cemetery, and expect him to come out unchanged. This is where Red starts disconnecting. This is where the emotional numbing begins. Because feeling everything, processing everything, acknowledging everything, it's too much. It's overwhelming. It threatens to stop him in his tracks. So he does what trauma survivors do. He compartmentalizes. He separates himself from his emotions. He creates distance between what he's experiencing and how he's responding to it. He becomes functional at the cost of being present. Red continues his journey, collects badges, fills his Pokédex, defeats more Team Rocket operations. And on the surface, everything looks fine. He's still winning, still succeeding, still being the hero everyone expects. But he's doing it on autopilot. He's going through the motions. He's performing the role of Red the trainer without actually being present, without actually feeling connected to what he's doing. This is dissociation. This is what happens when the present becomes too overwhelming, too threatening, too full of things you can't process. So your mind takes you somewhere else, somewhere safer, somewhere that doesn't hurt. And for Red, that somewhere is training, battling, leveling up. The mechanical aspects of being a trainer that don't require emotional engagement, that don't ask him to think about Raticate or Pokémon Tower or whether he's becoming something he doesn't want to be. Burris, he can train his Pokémon to level 50, level 60, level 70, and it means something concrete. It's measurable, it's controllable, it's safe in a way that human interaction isn't, in a way that processing trauma isn't. His Pokémon become more than partners. They become his entire world. because they're the only relationships that make sense anymore. The only connections that don't require him to be vulnerable, to explain himself, to admit that he's struggling. Pikachu doesn't ask why Red is quiet. Charizard doesn't question why Red spends all his time training. Venusaur doesn't need Red to explain his feelings. They just are. They exist. They battle. They grow stronger. And that's enough. This is why Red's team is so powerful by the time he reaches the Pokémon League. This is why his Pokémon are higher level than they need to be, higher level than Blue's, higher level than the Elite Fours. Because training has become Red's coping mechanism, his way of controlling the uncontrollable, his way of feeling powerful when everything else makes him feel helpless. Every hour spent grinding levels is an hour he doesn't have to think. Every battle won is proof he's still capable, still strong, still the trainer everyone believes he is, even if he doesn't feel like that person anymore. And it works. It works so well that nobody notices anything is wrong. Red reaches the Indigo Plateau, defeats the Elite Four, walks into the Champion's Chamber, and finds Blue waiting for him. Blue, who got there first. Blue, who achieved their shared dream. Blue, who's standing there as champion, probably thinking this moment will mean something, will bring closure to their rivalry, will prove something about who they've become. But Red doesn't feel triumph. He doesn't feel excitement. He just feels tired. So deeply tired. Because this was supposed to be the end. This was supposed to make everything worth it. All the fighting, all the danger, all the trauma. It was supposed to lead here, to becoming champion, to being the best. And he fights Blue. He wins. He becomes champion. And it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't bring back Raticate. It doesn't erase Pokémon Tower. It doesn't undo Team Rocket. It doesn't make the last year of his life feel less like a nightmare. It just is. It's just another thing that happened. Another battle won. Another expectation met. Professor Oak comes in, congratulates Red, criticizes Blue, tells Blue he doesn't treat his Pokémon with love, tells Red he's proud, and Red stands there, 11 years old, having just achieved the highest honor in the region, and he feels nothing, not pride, not joy, not satisfaction, nothing, just emptiness, just the realization that winning didn't save him, didn't heal him, didn't make him whole again. He's champion. But he's lost himself getting there. He's the best trainer in Kanto. But he doesn't know who he is anymore. He's accomplished everything. And it means nothing. This is the moment Red breaks. Not visibly. Not dramatically. But internally. Irreversibly. Because if becoming champion doesn't make him feel better, if achieving everything he worked for doesn't bring relief, then what's the point? What was it all for? All the fighting, all the fear, all the times he put himself in danger, all the times he pushed through when he wanted to quit. If the reward is just emptiness, just more pressure, just the expectation that he'll stay champion, defend his title, keep being the hero forever, Red can't do it. He can't be that person anymore. He can't maintain the facade. Can't keep pretending he's fine. Can't keep existing in a world that sees him as a symbol rather than a traumatized child. So he leaves, not immediately, not that day, but sometime in the 3 years between red and blue and gold and silver. Red walks away from everything. He doesn't defend his title, doesn't tell anyone where he's going, doesn't explain, doesn't say goodbye. He just goes, disappears, removes himself from the equation entirely, and he goes to Mount Silver, to the one place where nobody can follow him, where nobody will look for him, where he can exist without expectation, without pressure, without having to be anything other than alone. The mountain becomes his world. The cave at the summit becomes his home. The wild Pokémon become his only company, and he trains endlessly, obsessively, pushing his team to levels that no longer make sense, that serve no purpose beyond filling time, beyond having something to do, beyond maintaining the only identity he has left. Red the trainer, not Red the person, not Red the kid from Pallet Town, not Red the hero or Red the champion or Red the friend, just Red the trainer, the role he can still perform, the function he can still serve, even if there's no one there to see it, no one to appreciate it, no one to validate it. His Pokémon hit level 80. Chinye dar di farnwon 85. Wehsoni wavri inyarain 88. And he keeps training. Because what else is there? What else can he do? Go back to Pallet Town and explain to his mother why he hasn't called in 3 years? Meowie at Dan May face Professor Oak and admit he can't be the researcher Oak wanted him to be? Encounter Blue and pretend they can still be rivals after everything that happened? No, the mountain is simpler. Brian, the mountain doesn't ask questions, doesn't have expectations, doesn't require him to be human, just strong, just capable, just willing to battle anyone who manages to reach the summit. And that's where he stays, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, training his team, fighting wild Pokémon, existing in a state of suspended animation, neither moving forward nor able to go back, trapped in the only space that feels safe. This is agoraphobia in its purest form. Not fear of spaces, but fear of what spaces represent. Fear of the world and all its demands. Fear of being seen, being known, being expected to be something you're not capable of being anymore. The mountain is Red's panic room, his fortress, his prison, all at once. Because it protects him from the world, but it also traps him, isolates him, prevents him from healing because healing requires connection, requires vulnerability, requires being around people who can help you process what you've been through. And Red has no one. His mother is in Pallet Town, probably worried, probably hoping he'll come home, but unable to reach him, unable to help, unable to do anything but wait. Professor Oak is in his lab, probably wondering what happened to his most successful trainer, probably concerned, but ultimately, Oak was never Red's support system, never his therapist, never the person Red could turn to when things got too hard. Blue is a gym leader now, has moved on, has processed his own trauma and grown from it. But Blue and Red aren't friends anymore. Maybe they never really were. Maybe they were just two kids thrown into competition before they were ready. Before either of them understood what they were competing for. So Red stays alone, because alone is what he knows. Alone is what he's good at. Alone is the only way he can exist without breaking completely. And when you finally reach him, when you climb Mount Silver with your 16 badges, when you prove you're strong enough to stand before the legendary trainer, Red doesn't see a worthy opponent. He doesn't see someone who earned the right to challenge him. He sees a mirror. He sees another kid, probably around 11 years old, just like he was, who's been sent on a journey, who's faced danger, who's defeated Team Rocket, who's become champion, who's following the exact same path that destroyed him. And he can't warn you, can't tell you to turn back, can't explain what this journey costs, because he doesn't have the words anymore, doesn't have the ability to communicate what he's been through, doesn't have anything left except 3 dots and 6 Pokémon. So he battles you, sends out his level 88 Pikachu, throws everything he has at you, not because he wants to win, not because he cares about defending some imaginary title he abandoned years ago, but because battling is the only language he speaks now, the only way he knows how to interact, the only thing he has left. And if you beat him, if you prove you're stronger, maybe, just maybe, he hopes you'll be different, that you'll handle it better than he did, that you won't end up alone on a mountain at 14, unable to speak, unable to connect, unable to exist in the world you saved. But he doesn't say that, can't say that, just disappears after you win, vanishes back into the mountain, waiting for the next challenger, waiting for something to change, waiting for a reason to come down from the mountain, waiting for someone to understand that the silence isn't strength, it's survival, it's all he has left. This is the tragedy of Red. This is why his story resonates with so many people. Why players have been theorizing and analyzing and trying to understand him for over 2 decades. Because we recognize something in that silence, something in that isolation, something in that retreat from a world that asked too much. Red represents what happens when we glorify strength without acknowledging cost, when we celebrate heroes without supporting them, when we expect children to handle adult problems and then wonder why they break. He's the uncomfortable truth that the Pokémon world doesn't want to acknowledge, that sending 11-year-olds on dangerous journeys has consequences, that fighting organized crime leaves scars, that winning doesn't always feel like winning, that becoming the best doesn't mean you're okay. And the saddest part, nobody saves Red. Nobody comes to get him. Nobody stages an intervention or offers therapy or even just asks if he's all right. They just make him a legend, a secret boss, a challenge to overcome. They turn his trauma into content, his isolation into mystery, his breakdown into gameplay. The world moves on without him. Johto has its own champion. Kanto has its gym leaders. Team Rocket has been defeated. Everything's fine, except Red. Red is still on that mountain, still training, still silent, still trapped in the moment he realized winning doesn't heal trauma. Miffy. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Red's story is supposed to be uncomfortable, supposed to make us question the systems that create child heroes, supposed to make us think about what we're actually asking of these trainers we send into danger. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe Red is just a character in a video game, a secret boss designed to be difficult. And all of this analysis is reading too much into design decisions made for gameplay reasons rather than narrative ones. But I don't think so. I think the silence is intentional. The isolation is meaningful. The brokenness is real. Because Game Freak didn't have to put Red on Mount Silver. Didn't have to make him mute. Didn't have to create this image of a former champion who disappeared into the wilderness. They chose that. They chose to show us what happens after the credits roll. What happens when the hero realizes the victory was hollow. What happens when trauma goes unprocessed and support systems fail. And that choice matters. Red's story matters because it's honest. In a franchise full of happy endings and friendship speeches and the power of believing in yourself, Red shows us what happens when believing in yourself isn't enough. When friendship fades, when happy endings aren't possible because you're too broken to enjoy them. He's the ghost at the feast. The price of heroism, the cost nobody wants to calculate, and he's standing on that mountain, silent, powerful, alone, waiting for something that might never come. Recovery, connection, understanding, peace. Because he's 14 years old, and he's already lived a lifetime, already fought a war, already lost parts of himself he can never get back, and nobody noticed until it was too late, until the legend replaced the person, until the silence became permanent. Red doesn't need challengers. Red needs help, needs therapy, needs someone to climb that mountain, not to battle him, but to sit with him, to tell him it's okay to come down, to show him that the world below can be safe again, that he doesn't have to stay frozen at 14, that healing is possible even when it feels impossible. But that's not the game we play. That's not the ending we get. We just battle him, defeat him, collect our victory, and leave him there, alone again, silent again, trapped again, until the next player comes along and does it all over again. An eternal loop, a permanent state of trauma, a ghost that can't move on because nobody's given him permission to, because nobody's shown him how, because nobody understands that the strongest trainer in the world is also the most broken, and maybe, just maybe, that's something worth thinking about next time you climb Mount Silver, next time you face Red, next time you see those 3 dots where words should be, because that silence is saying something. If only we'd listen. So here's what I want to know. Buddy, what do you think happened to Red after he became champion? Do you think the Raticate theory is true, Combine, or is there another explanation for why he disappeared? What moment do you think broke him? And do you think he can ever heal? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your theories, your interpretations, your own experiences with what Red Story means to you. And if this kind of deep dive into Pokemon lore and psychology is your thing, if you want to see more analysis of the darker corners of games we grew up loving, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got plenty more where this came from. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey to the peak of Mount Silver, through the silence, through the trauma, through everything Red couldn't say but the game showed us anyway. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and maybe check in on your friends, even the strong ones, especially the strong ones, because sometimes the people who seem most put together are the ones who need help the most.